Alright, so if you've been following along with the videos, the last one we did was the straight-on portrait of our character sheet. So this guy right here. So step one was to do our standing character. Step two was to do their straight-on portrait. And step three is going to be doing their portrait in either a profile or a 3/4 view. So on your paper, you've left some space for one last portrait, and we're going to go ahead and start setting that up. So the first thing I'm going to do is kind of the same as when I was drawing my straight-on portrait. I wanted to look at my reference and figure out the shape of the head. Now the shape of the head might look a little bit different in profile view or 3/4 view. So it's going to really help if you can go on Google and find an image of your character with their head turned in the position that you want to draw. I'm going to be doing both, right? The profile and 3/4. You do not have to do that. You may choose one of them. Alright, so your shape may be a little bit different than mine depending on the style of your character. Take your time, make adjustments where necessary, pay attention to the way that their head is shaped. And the main difference between drawing profile and 3/4 is the position of the nose. So in our regular portrait, our nose is in the center. On a profile drawing, the nose is all the way to the side, right? And in a 3/4 view, it's 3/4 of the way over. So there's really no line you have to draw in your profile. So if you're doing a profile, the end of the head is where the nose goes. If you're drawing in a 3/4 view, try to measure it 3/4 of the way over. And that's really the main difference between profile and 3/4 is where you put this line, right? And you would do the same thing that you did in your first portrait, which is determine where on your character the eyes go. So are they dead center in the middle? Are they higher up, lower? Depends on the style that you're looking at. I'm remembering that my characters are just a little bit below center. And again, you're not going to be doing both. Pick one unless you want an extra challenge or you're like super bored. But I think drawing just one of these is enough of a challenge, especially if you pick 3/4. All right, and continuing our sort of compare and contrast between profile and 3/4. One of the main differences, or one of the really big differences, is that in profile, where the head is turned all the way, you only see one eye. In 3/4, you see both eyes, but the eye on this side is going to end up bigger than the eye on this side, and that's what makes 3/4 so difficult. So I'm going to go ahead and measure where I want to put the eyes. And your character could have really large eyes or really small eyes. You got to look at that reference and spend some time to analyze it, or how wide they should be. If you can find a reference of your character in this position, their head in this position, that will help you. Okay. So if you can imagine where the eyes are going to go in these two separate drawings, they're the primary difference here is that there's one eye here, and there's two eyes here, and if this portrait was driving you crazy with the symmetry, you'll be glad to know this portrait and this portrait are asymmetrical, and you're not going to have to worry about that quite as much. All right, so now I'm finding where the nose should go. All right, how close is it to the eyes? Is it far away? Is it kind of scrunched up? Okay, and I'm going to do the same thing with the mouth. This is the same as our straight-on portrait, but it's not going to end up being symmetrical. But in terms of spacing things out vertically, like how far away from the eyes the nose should be, and the arrangement of the features vertically, those steps are going to be the same. So that's what I'm doing right now. I'm going to find how far out the nose should go, right? So this is where it really helps if you have a picture of your character in profile. Same thing with the mouth. So looking at my reference. That doesn't seem right. That looks better. So these are all simple shapes. Don't start with too much detail. No, I think this eye is kind of in the wrong place. All right. So I've roughed out the position of all my facial features. I'm like fairly confident that they're positioned correctly. I think the foreheads are a little bit small, so I can go in and adjust those. But what I am ready to do now is start adding the details in. I'll probably speed up this part of the video, and if anything interesting happens, I'll stop at a so one thing that occurred to me while I was drawing that you guys could consider is what I didn't do was make my 3/4 view or my profiles view the same size as my straight on portrait. So they're a little bit bigger. And actually, that's not that's not as easy as doing it the same size. If I had been thinking ahead, what I really would want to do is take this measurement right here and transfer it so that my heads are the same size. And then I could use a ruler to sort of check the spacing of things and make sure that they come out really similar. What I've ended up doing now is I have to do everything by eye, and it just gives me a little bit more work. So when you're drawing, before you start, take the measurement of the head you've already done and transfer it down here. And you can also take the measurement of where the eyes are supposed to go and where the nose are supposed to go. And that way you don't have to work as hard lining things up. So that's something that came up while I was drawing. And it might be something you guys want to consider when you're laying out these shapes, these simple shapes and these lines. All right, so in this 3/4 view portrait that I did, I'm definitely getting to the end stages where I don't want to be finalizing details and checking those really small lines, darkening some of them, erasing some of the sort of guidelines that I have and don't need now. So this is about ready to move into that next stage. The profile that I'm working on is a little bit earlier in the process, but I'm satisfied with the vertical positioning of all these features. I'm going to keep this video a little bit shorter so it'll upload onto YouTube quicker. But there's two things I'd like you guys to consider before you start drawing on your paper. The first thing is, unlike in our original portrait, we're not concerned with symmetry, right? The left and the right side are not going to be the same. In your 3/4 view portrait, one side, everything is going to be bigger than the other side. So this eye is bigger than this eye. In the profile, there's not even two sides. There's just one. So you're just looking at either the left or the right side. So there's one eye, there's one ear. You're only looking at half of the mouth. You're only looking at one side of the nose. So we don't care as much or at all about left to right symmetry. What we care about is the position of these features vertically, right? Where are they in terms of height? How close should the eyes and the nose be? And that brings me to my second thing I want you guys to think about. And that is something that I didn't do, but as I was drawing, I realized would have been a good idea. So since you've already done one portrait, go ahead, measure that portrait up with your hands or a ruler, and make your second portrait the exact same size. So when I started drawing, I just kind of made the head a little bit bigger. You know, I wanted more space to draw. But what I realized was if I had taken the measurement of my first portrait and copied it down here and made these two portraits the exact same dimensions, I could have compared and contrasted the two portraits, and I could have found, you know, errors a little bit more easily, and gotten them to look more similar. And it turned out to be more work doing them different sizes. So before you start, go ahead, go back to that first portrait you did, measure it up, and copy that measurement onto the blank part of your page and make both portraits the same size. And that'll be the last step for this character sheet. I'm not requiring color or inking to these because I'm not sure what materials people have in their homes. If you do have those materials and you would like to do those steps on this portrait or the standing pose, let me know on Google Classroom, and I can do like a supplement video where I go over how you would do those steps. So good luck on these portraits, and if you run into any problems or get stuck, definitely let me know on Google Classroom or by email.